The left no longer makes arguments about policy's effectiveness. Their only argument is character assassination.
You ever get the feeling that politics these days is less about actual debate and more about just, like, tearing each other down?
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like we've moved away from reasoned arguments about policy and into this swamp of personal attacks.
It's exhausting, right? Like, can we just get back to talking about the issues?
Exactly. And that's why we're here today, to take a deep dive into this whole idea of character assassination versus legitimate argument, to help you, the listener, spot these tactics and not get swept up in all the noise.
I like that, cut through the noise.
Oh.
And I think one of the best places to start is with this quote we came across from Ben Shapiro. He said, "The left no longer makes arguments about policy's effectiveness. Their only argument is character assassination." So let's unpack that, shall we?
All right, let's unpack it. I think the first thing we need to do is define what we mean by an argument and differentiate that from something like, say, slander.
Yeah, good point, because those words get thrown around a lot, but what do they actually mean?
Okay, so an argument in its simplest form is a set of reasons given to support a conclusion, kind of like you're presenting evidence. You're using logic to try to persuade someone. You're building a case, right?
Right, okay.
Slander, on the other hand, that's a whole different beast. It's about making false statements. It's intentionally trying to damage someone's reputation.
Okay, so with those definitions in mind, let's look at some examples from the world of politics.
Yeah.
One that immediately comes to my mind, and this was everywhere, especially on social media, was the constant comparisons of Donald Trump to Hitler.
Ooh, yeah, that's a very potent, very loaded comparison. And it definitely falls into the category of what we're talking about.
Right, because, I mean, it's not to say that you can't have strong disagreements with Trump's policies or actions. You know, there's a lot to debate there.
Absolutely, you can disagree vehemently, but to just throw out those kinds of emotionally charged comparisons, without any real context, any nuance, any attempt to explain the connection, that's not productive.
Totally, and it feels like it just shuts down the conversation before it can even begin. Like, how can you have a reasonable discussion when you're just throwing around these, like, super inflammatory labels?
That's exactly. It's like you're just trying to shut down the other person and not actually engage with their ideas.
And it's not just a one-sided thing either. Remember when Hillary Clinton labeled Tulsi Gabbard a Russian asset? Or when MSNBC called Elon Musk a right-wing agent? It feels like this kind of thing happens, well, a lot.
It does. And honestly, it's something we should all be wary of, no matter what side of the political spectrum you fall on.
I think so, too. Like, when you hear those kinds of accusations, it should always give you pause.
Yeah, make you think.
Force you to ask some critical questions,
Yeah.
like, okay, are these claims backed up by actual facts? Are they part of a larger, well-reasoned argument?
Right. Or are they just meant to demonize, to silence anyone who dares to have a different viewpoint?
It's scary because it seems like this kind of tactic can be really effective.
Oh, it absolutely can. And that's why we need to be extra vigilant, especially when it comes to media.
You know what this reminds me of? That study the Media Research Center did. They analyzed the coverage of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump on the evening news, and the difference was huge. Like 78% positive coverage for Harris versus 85% negative for Trump.
Wow.
Yeah. And, that just makes you think.
Yeah, it makes you think about, the power of the media, right? And the potential for bias. Because even if they're not outright lying, you have to wonder, are they presenting a balanced picture? Or are they subtly, or maybe not so subtly, influencing how viewers perceive these figures?
So, big picture, after diving into all of this, what should we, as regular people just trying to stay informed, actually take away from this?
I think the biggest takeaway here is the importance of being a discerning consumer of information. Don't just blindly accept everything you hear or read, especially when it comes to politics. When you see someone being targeted, don't just get swept up in the rhetoric, the personal attacks. Step back and ask yourself, is this a legitimate argument? Or is this an attempt to assassinate their character?
That's good advice. So much of it just boils down to thinking critically, right?
Exactly. Look for the evidence, the logic, the willingness to actually engage in a real debate.
And if those things are missing,
maybe it's time to turn off the noise and go find a better source of information.
and maybe, just maybe, if enough of us do that, we can help shift the conversation back to where it should be, focused on the issues, not the personalities.
Well, that's a thought, isn't it? What if each of us in our own little corner of the world tried to be a force for more constructive dialogue?
What if we held those in power accountable for the language they use?
Now, wouldn't that be something